Download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at onenewsnow.com. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email us anytime at focalpoint@afr.net. Focalpoint@afr.net.
Hey, and welcome back to Free for All Friday on Focal Point. The After Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. We'll talk about anything that you want to talk about. Rick in South Mississippi, James in Plant City, Florida. I'm going to get to you in just one quick second, even before we go back to more sound bites. But Jeff and I were talking over the break, and we've got some more. Jeff is just a fountain of insight, wisdom, knowledge about all things that have to do with insects, entomology, the entire world of bugs. So, Jeff, you were bringing me some fascinating information. You know, if you've got a thermometer, you may be one of those people that you rely on your iPhone. It's got a little weather gauge in there. You can open it up. It'll tell you exactly what the temperature is. Well, your iPhone could go out.
Yeah.
The battery could go dead. You could have a thermometer outside your back door with one of those mercury little things in it. You could drop it and break it, and you would have no way to tell the temperature. But, Jeff, you have a solution for our listening audience.
I do, and you may have a thermometer out your back door and you don't even know it. It's there's crickets. Speaking of crickets, there's a formula you can tell the outside temperature by the crickets. It's how you count how many chirps they make in 1 minute, divide it by 4, then add the number 40, and it'll tell you the outside temperature.
Wow, just that simple.
Yeah, count the chirps in 1 minute, divide by 4, then
4.
add 40.
Add 40 or add 40.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like that formula for converting from centigrade to Fahrenheit, which I never can remember.
No, just use the crickets.
It's 5/9 plus 32 or 9/5 minus 32 or something like that. Anyway, it's got 5 and a 9 and a 32 in it. But this sounds simpler. Just count the cricket chirps. Cricket chirps.
Cricket chirps.
Yeah, well, that's a formula obviously not going to work for me. I don't even know what I'm talking about. So you count the cricket chirps, then you divide by 4.
Yes.
And then add
40,
and that'll tell you the outside temperature.
Yeah, it's supposed to be foolproof.
Okay, well, there you go.
All right.
All we need to know. All right, thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
You know, doesn't it kind of scare you that Jeff had enough interest to actually research that and come up with that? I don't know. That worries me a little bit. Let's go to James in Plant City, Florida. James, welcome to Free for All Friday on Focal Point. Number here is 888-589-8840. Welcome, James. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, and I love your program, Brian.
Thank you very much, James. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thanks for calling in.
Things that I would like to talk about, and that's Obamacare and Barack Hussein Obama. As far as Obamacare goes, I hate the idea of a politician in Washington, D.C. telling me that I must buy something or I'll be fined on my income tax if I don't. I have to pay a penalty, a fine. And that just rubs me entirely the wrong way.
Well, you know, and James, I think what we're talking about here is we're talking about something that instinctively we recognize as wrong. I mean, we don't even need to know the Constitution or the Bible or anything else. I mean, the law written in our heart says, look, this is wrong.
Yes.
It is wrong for government to arrogate to itself the power to order me to buy something. That's just tyranny, and it's just plain wrong. And then you go to the Constitution, and you go to Article 1, Section 8, and it lists all of the powers that we the people have delegated to the federal government. All the things we said the federal government can do, and there's about 18 or 19 powers of action in there. They can fund the military. They can write the rules for the military. They can punish counterfeiters. They can build post offices. They can punish pirates. There's a whole bunch of stuff. They can produce a currency and all that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we have delegated to them to do. But the authority to compel people to buy a product that they don't want to use, that's not in there anywhere, is it, James?
No, sir.
So, all right, anything else you want to add?
Yes, I heard a wise man say something about Obamacare a while back. He said, burn it to the ground.
Well, I don't know how wise that guy was, but he said a smart thing there. You know, and you're exactly right. Burn this thing to the ground.
Yes, sir.
You know, and it's interesting, James, and I appreciate your call. Thank you for that. I think I had the story yesterday. Representative Jack Kingston is running for Senate seat in Georgia. It's hotly contested. And he's got another prominent Republican politician, another member of the House by the name of Paul Brown, who's running against him. And Jack Kingston was saying the other day, we ought to try to fix Obamacare because people are going to get hurt by this thing. And it was, and apparently the backlash was so strong and so intense against Kingston because conservatives, Americans, the base, we want this thing. We don't want it fixed. We want it flushed. The only thing that's acceptable to us is full, complete repeal. This thing, as James reminded us, this thing's, in my estimation, has got to be burned to the ground and start completely over. And that's what the people of Georgia are saying to Jack Kingston. So he backpedaled off of that thing so fast, give you a nosebleed. Anyway, thanks for the call, James. 888-589-8840. Let's go back to the Trey Gowdy clips with Simon Lazarus. And again, just to close the loop on this pardon power, this constitutional attorney is saying that the power of the pardon on the part of the president gives him the constitutional authority to choose not to enforce laws. This is absolutely ridiculous. And that's why Trey Gowdy crowds him on it. He says, can the president pardon somebody before they do anything? Well, obviously not. It's just absurd, but this guy couldn't answer the question. Because a pardon is something that you offer to somebody after he has committed an offense. We get pardoned for our sins when we go to the foot of the cross because we have committed sins. There's some offense. We are guilty before a holy and just God. We beg him for a pardon. You have to commit a sin in order even to be eligible for a pardon. And this guy's saying, no, the president can pardon people before they do anything. It's just absolutely absurd. Now, here is clip number 2. Again, Trey Gowdy bearing down now on this whole issue of whether the executive branch has the authority to decide which laws it's going to enforce and which ones it won't, and how stiff the penalties are that the executive branch is going to decide to impose. Let's listen.
My question is this: if you can dispense with immigration laws or marijuana laws or mandatory minimums, can you also dispense with election laws?
I think we've gone over this ground many times.
Well, just humor me. Let's do it one more time. Can the president suspend election laws?
No.
Why not? If he can suspend mandatory minimum and immigration laws, why not election laws?
Because we live in a government of laws, and the president is bound to obey them and apply them.
Well, he's not applying the ACA, and he's not applying immigration laws, and he's not applying marijuana laws, and he's not applying mandatory minimums. What's the difference with election laws?
Boy, Trey Gowdy, what a stud. That guy just getting after it here. And he's pointing out the absolute complete hypocrisy. This constitutional attorney on the one, or authority, on the one hand says, no, he's obligated to obey and implement and enforce the laws of the land. But then on the other, and this guy actually came to Obama's defense for not enforcing immigration laws, not enforcing the Affordable Care Act, not enforcing the laws on marijuana, not enforcing mandatory minimums for drug offenses. So just the hypocrisy there, but says you got to do it on election laws. Well, we've seen with Eric Holder, he's not even doing it with election laws. Here's clip number 3 where Trey Gowdy bores in on what Eric Holder is doing with drug enforcement laws.
Because Eric Holder sent out a memo that we are no longer going to put in the indictment the drug amounts. Do you agree with me that Congress can pass mandatory minimums?
Constitutionally, yes.
Do you agree that Congress can pass statutory maximums?
Pardon me?
Can Congress also pass statutory maximums? In other words, you can't get more than 30 years for a crime.
Of course.
Can a president exceed a statutory maximum?
Can he extinguish, did you say?
No, can he exceed it?
Can he exceed it? Well, how would he do that? I mean, keep someone in prison beyond his prison term.
Well, if you can put him in prison for less time than Congress says is the law, can you also do it for more time than Congress says is the law?
It's really, it's not, this is kind of fruitless.
Because the answer to that question obviously is yes. In other words, if the president is going to arrogate to himself the right to impose a less of a sentence than the law requires. I mean, there are mandatory minimums, and that's Gowdy's point. Whether you like it or not, they're in there. Congress passed them. It's the law of the land. Remember, that's all we heard when the Republicans were talking about repealing it or not funding it. It's the law of the land. You got to accept it. You got to just endure it. Well, so are mandatory minimum sentences. And so Gowdy's point, look, if you can send somebody to jail for less time than the law requires, why can't you, on the other hand, send them to prison for more time than the law requires? And the guy has absolutely no answer to that question. Here is the last exchange, and now he's talking to Jonathan Turley about this presidential overreach from the executive branch. Let's listen.
If a president is ignoring entire categories of the law, whether it be immigration, marijuana, mandatory minimum, the ACA, what is the remedy for the legislative branch?
Well, first of all, the first part of that question is, as you may know, I do criminal defense work. I would never go to a prosecutor and say, I want your prosecutorial discretion to say that the entire class of which my client belongs cannot be subject to this law, because prosecutors would look at me and say, are you insane? I am not Congress. So I wouldn't even raise the question. Now, in terms of where we go from here, I'm not too sure, because the great concern I have for this body is that it's not only being circumvented, but it is also being denied the ability to enforce its inherent powers. Many of these questions are not close in my view. The president is outside the line. But it has to go in front of a court, and that court has to grant review. And that's where we have the most serious constitutional crisis I view in my lifetime. And that is, this body is becoming less and less relevant.
Now, this guy, Jonathan Turley, this guy's an uber leftist. He's a criminal defense attorney, so they always defend the bad guys. He's got the sympathy for the victim, thinks the law ought to be on the side of the victim and not on the side of the perp. And he's a law professor at George Washington University. He's a noted liberal, noted leftist guy. And notice what he's saying. This is what is striking about this. I played the soundbite from Ted Cruz yesterday, who's a conservative, a soundbite from Michael Cannon Cato. He's a libertarian. Now a soundbite from Jonathan Turley, who's a liberal, all of them saying that President Obama is out of control. This is a liberal saying, look, these issues where Obama is flouting the law, this is a liberal saying this. It's not even a close call. He's not even on the edges. He's not even in the margins. He's not just 6 inches out of bounds. He's clear out of the stadium. He is outside the line. This is a liberal who will stretch and bend and twist the Constitution into a pretzel to defend a criminal. And he's saying President Obama is so far outside the line, it's not even close. And it's the most severe constitutional crisis in my lifetime. And he says the problem is a lack of remedy. It's got to get to a court, but Congress cannot sue the president for not enforcing the law. Focal Point, AFR Talk.